Welcome to Artist to Art. Welcome back with Laurence de Valmy. And here we are. Here we are. Here we are. I'm Aaron Jack. And you can find me at Aaron Jack Line Art. So here we go. We're going live. We're going live. I love going live. Here we are. Here we are, present in the day. Hey,
Hello.
how are you?
Fine. Nice to
Yeah,
see you.
nice to see you too. So where are you? Where are we in the world?
Yeah, so I'm based near Philadelphia,
Oh,
and I am in my studio, and I'm lucky to have a home studio, so I can work without being disrupted by the whole crazy situation.
so many crazy situations around the world.
Indeed. So I value the quiet space in my studio.
That's so beautiful. So beautiful. It's so beautiful to have that quiet space.
Yes.
So how did you come to Philadelphia? How did you end up in this space?
Yeah, well, I don't know if I will end up here, who knows, but
How did you end up here right now today?
yeah, well, 7 years ago, we moved from France to the USA, first in New Jersey, and now here. And it was a move for my husband's job, but also because we wanted to come back to the States and have this as an experience for the whole family. So there I am.
Wow, where in France were you before that?
Paris, mostly Paris and the South.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
So what is going on for you during this whole time of COVID? What are you making? What are you creating? What are you showing and sharing?
Yeah. Well, I was lucky enough to have already, some galleries I was working with and some art shows that were scheduled. Then, of course, things got canceled or postponed. But then the situation varies from one country to the other. So I had a show in Korea that didn't get canceled. Of course, most of the art fairs were canceled. Then in France, I worked with a gallery in Normandy that could reopen in the spring. So, depending on the situation, of the places, it has been different. As for me, I kept on working on my paintings, and I'm very grateful to have collectors who still are supporting me. And so I won't say it didn't disturb me because I was like everybody, stunned and at loss. But then painting helped me to regain some kind of peace of mind, even though it's not every day the case.
Wow, that's amazing. So the things were still happening in Korea.
Yes, it was in the Sika Museum, and it was in the summer. Now it's the exhibition is over. So yeah, it was nice to know that things could run in some places.
Wow. Wow. So there's still things running in different parts of the world in different ways is like one of the.
Yes. Yeah, I have a collector in Hong Kong who was saying, things go on. Like people have very serious rules to follow, but galleries are open and exhibitions are there. Even though it's not ideal, it's not at a complete standstill.
Right. Yeah, people are wearing their face coverings and
Yeah,
they're very aware there.
Asians have a lot to. We have a lot to learn about from them. So
Mm, mm.
that will be
So
maybe what.
true. We have so much to learn from each other in different ways. So
Very true. Very
hence
true.
we're here today to learn about what you have to
Yeah.
share.
Very happy to connect.
Excellent. So we're in your studio right now, right?
Yeah, correct.
Would you like to
And
show us around? Mm-hmm.
sure. In fact, when the lockdown happened, I was supposed to have an event in New York and during the Affordable Art Fair. And since it got canceled, we turned the event into a studio tour. And so I installed some painting on the wall, which, I had not necessarily done before. And so these paintings are part of a collaboration I've done with a brand that is called Art Girl Rising. And it's a platform to support women artists and to develop awareness about women artists of the past, but also of the present. And so I created paintings to celebrate some abstract expressionist artists like Lee Krasner behind me, or there is Alma Thomas, and here Joan Mitchell. And so we did this collaboration, and the brand creates T-shirt that you can buy, and the first names of these artists are on the T-shirts, and part of the profit goes to the National Museum for Women in the Arts.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So could you, wow. So how did this collaboration come about?
Well, I was following Adgar Rising, and I had been in touch with the founder, Liesel. And one day I thought, oh, we should do something together. Since my work is about men and women of the past, and about sharing stories. And I, of course, have at heart to share stories of women artists. So, I reached out to her and told her, what do you think? And she was like, yeah, sure, let's go. So that was how it happened.
Wow, that's so cool. So what's going on the wall back there? Why don't you tell us a little bit about like
Yeah,
what's happening? Like what inspired you to get into
sure.
this?
So these Instagram paintings are anachronistic paintings. So I place an Instagram in the past. So all my paintings take place before June 2010, when Instagram was created. And I appropriate an artwork of a famous artist, and I share in the dialogues the story behind the artwork. So here, Lee Krasner, she painted this sun woman a year after the death of her husband, Jackson Pollock. And for her, it was a liberating um, painting period of her life where um, she was grieving, but also rebirthing as a person and as an artist. So I share this story in the dialogues. So all the dialogues are based on my research, the biographies and the history of the artists.
Wow, so you really delve in deep into the histories behind each one,
Yeah,
sounds like.
and there are so many fascinating stories that sometimes I don't have to even go very deep. It's just they're there. We don't necessarily, talk about them all the time, and of course, but yeah, I enjoy. I've always enjoyed learning about history through the personal stories, and when you look at art history, it's a group of connections. I mean, the people were not connected on Instagram, but they were connected in real life through different means, or they were connected through time. So I like also to show the continuity in art history, artists who got inspired by each other's. So sometimes we think appropriation is something that is of the 21st century or very 20th century, but it happened before. And so I like to show the links between the artists through times.
Wow. So you, what got you into showing those links and like trying to understand that like the links of art history?
I think just my personal interest into these stories, and it sometimes just following an exhibition I see, retrospective on some artists and some books I read. I love books. So, and also I'm lucky to have a great source called Google. So it's very helpful to have access to all that information. And usually it's just, one information leading to another.
Wow. So it's just kind of like as all of these different connections happen and how so Lucas just joined on here. Thank you, Lucas. And Henrietta and all the beautiful people out there. Thank you. So it's really interesting. Like, how are these artists connected? What are some of the more interesting links that you found in art history of how these people have been connected and how they create work together?
Yeah. Well, some links people know about them, but they are not necessarily widely communicated. Like, for example, when I was reading about Robert Indiana, who painted the famous Love painting, um, even if I was going in Wikipedia or other biographies, they were not mentioning how deep his relation was with Elspeth Kelly. They had been lovers, they had been working together, and so when I knew about that back story, uh, I could see the links between, the works of Indiana and Kelly in different styles. So that's one story, for example. But then I like also to share these hidden stories, like in Gustav Klimt, the famous Kiss painting. The lady in the painting is supposed to be Emilie Flog, who was an Austrian designer, and she was his lifelong partner. We don't know for sure they were lovers, but we know for sure that they were very close, and she inherited from half of his estate when he died, and his last words were for her. So I like to share about these, personal stories that we don't necessarily I mean, everybody knows about the painting, but who knows about Emilie Flog? Not so many people.
Wow. So just like getting to learn all of
Yeah,
these and all of these histories. Let's take a look at some more of them. We have some images
yes.
here.
So that's another Klimt with Adele Bloch-Bauer, who was this famous, I mean, now famous, but not a, she was an Austrian patron of the arts and from a wealthy family, and her husband and her supported artists. And of course, the story of her with Klimt was famous thanks to the mm, story of the inheritance of the painting that was kept by the Austrian government and then given back to the hair as it should be. So The Woman in Gold was a movie made after that. But I was mostly focusing on how, some artists thrive because they are supported by some patrons, and it was the case for the Bloch-Bauer, who supported many artists.
Wow. So what did you learn? So you talk about this patron. What did you learn about what have you learned kind of like about these patrons of the past that you think are is so important to share?
Well, that's, they were passionate about the artists they supported. And it's also the case of collectors today who can really invest in the career of an artist and support them and promote their work. So some, I mean, depending on people, it can go in different ways, but some have been really, if we take Isabella, I know the name, who supported John Singer Sargent. Um, uh, she created a museum in Boston, and now, of course, her last name slips my mind, but she clearly made the career of John Singer Sargent in the USA. So, Isabella Stewart Gardner. Ah, thank God. It came back. So, yeah, some that's why, you know, the stories of the artist are there, and sometimes the patrons are in the back. And it can be patron, but it can be a art gallery owner. Um, Pierre Matisse, the son of Henry Matisse, supported abstract artists during the war, and he was key in the, I'd say, input of abstract art on the New York art scene. So, you know, people like that who've
Wow.
been key.
Wow. So you're really looking at this whole network of how all these people are interconnected into culture, it seems like.
Yeah, and I mean, just like we are connected today, all of us, it's just how people are, you know, humans. We say that there are less than six connections in every people of the world. So,
Wow.
so this,
What's going on here?
yeah, this one I created for the exhibition in Korea, and it's a diptych with the other one, which is of Basquiat, and it's the theme of duality that Picasso treated. And he, at the time, portrayed his lover, who was his secret lover because he was married. And so I make a secret comment from Marie-Thérèse, who just shared a few emojis, um, just to reflect, you know, that she's discreet, but she's there.
Interesting. So you're kind of like deconstructing like how people connect now versus like what it would have been in the past.
Yes, yes, it's also reflection on our way of communicating today, and of course, artists in the past could only do so through letters or in person, and we are lucky enough to have the chance to connect despite the distance.
Yeah, it's very interesting how that is. So so how are you making these? Like what's your process?
So I use acrylic painting, so that's my medium. And for example, I have a piece there that is in progress. So you will recognize easily the artist. And so I just go from, you know, the original painting to recreate, to appropriate the painting, the image I chose. And then I have the story that I want to share. So I write the dialogues, um, and that's the process. So it's mostly I start with an artist or and his story.
Hmm. So each one is kind of like a whole like iteration of like what are those stories? What are those ideas behind it?
Yes. And I am really, I mean, this series has enabled me to combine my interest for art history and painting because I really like to, I mean, the physical aspect of painting. So it's it's thrilling for me to be able to enter into the personality of the different artists through their different styles and to recreate. And so while I do that, you know, I kind of share something. I think it makes me understand them better.
Wow.
So that's the second part of the diptych, and that's Basquiat appropriating or recreating his own version of Girl with a Mirror, inspired by Picasso, who was one of his big influence. And of course, the treatment is really Basquiat's, but it's also a kind of dialogue. And so, since the theme was duality, I made a diptych to put both in dialogue with each other.
Interesting. So so each of them, are you using like the original media or are you always using acrylic to portray?
I I always use acrylic. So Yeah, sometimes it's a fun challenge to try to recreate, for example, encaustic in acrylic or watercolor or a different medium with acrylic. But acrylic is really a very flexible medium, so I can manage to achieve a wide array of things. Of course, each medium has their own quality, and I give the impression of what it is.
Wow. So writing the words, or is that all acrylic as well?
Now I print them and I apply them with a special paper that was not supposed to do exactly that, but I kind of made that my own process. And so I apply it and then I recover with painting and varnish. So it's a whole process in itself. So it's mixed medium, I would say, if, acrylic and the dialogues.
Interesting.
So this is John Mitchell. It was the painting she exhibited at the Ninth Street Show, which was the big show for abstract expressionist that launched the movement into the art scene in New York. And so I share about it. And, the people who were there, she was supported by de Kooning, Franz Klein, and that's, a little moment in time that I capture there.
Wow. So you really see like how they supported each other.
Yes. And this painting in particular, it was not easy to find the image because when I was digging into the bio of John Mitchell, I mean, the title of the painting was Untitled. So go figure which one was in the exhibition. And then the pictures of the exhibitions did not show clearly her work. So I really had to, and I luckily find a source on a blog about her painting. So I was like, yeah.
Wow. So you're working with a lot of primary sources here to find
Yeah.
out this like history.
Yes, and that's why I love my library.
Wow. So how do you like choose those stories and start to dig into each one?
So for this particular painting, it was really part of my collaboration with Art Girl Rising. So I had in mind that I wanted to talk about these ladies, and I liked to highlight paintings that were key for them, and so or moments that were key for them. And that show was important because it put John Mitchell and other artists on the scene. So I like to focus on the early stage of their career. It's often interesting to see how they got there and what happened to make them become successful as artists, if not commercially successful in their days, but later on. But sometimes it's just because I like an artwork and I want to share about it.
Hmm. What are some of the largest ways that you found that artists have made it to be like what you would call successful in their careers? And what does that mean? What does that successful in their careers mean? And how have you found, like, because you've been looking at these patterns, what are some of those patterns that you've seen?
Connections. I would say that's the one thing that strikes me when you read all these bios. People got somewhere because someone helped them at one point. Um, Even Vincent van Gogh, that is, who has this image of, the lone artist that nobody knew of. This is not true. I mean, he had his brother who was supporting his work. He was known by the group of the Impressionists. And by the end of his life, people who were in the art world knew about him, and he got some critical recognition. Oh, he died, and that ended the story. But so some people have eagerly looked for connection, let's say like Andy Warhol, who was, very good at networking and making it happen, and who had a very precise um, path in his mind, I think. And for some, it happened more by chance, or because they were part of a school or a group of artists. So, but I think it would be, in my humble point of view, the connections.
Hmm. And what are some of those patterns and those connections that you've seen uh, those artists have? Like, what are there any like certain ways that they've been connected to these other artists or patrons or galleries? What are some of those like
Mm.
patterns that you've seen?
Well, it's often because they work in the same style, and if we take a groups of artists like the Ninth Street Collective, well, they were gathered around, same ideas. Um, and then it can be just a community of artists. That's a difficult question. Like, for I think what strikes me there, it's you can often read like, this person recommended the work of that person to this one, and then boom, this happened. And sometimes it takes years, and uh, but I think um, they all in one way, were friends or not, but were connected through their work.
Hmm. So there was some like connection in the ideas, you would say, or like the styles or
Yeah, I
what have
mean,
you, and
often,
they were connected in some way.
yeah, I would often, yes.
And would you say a lot of those were like different generations that they were connected across, or has that played a role? Would you say when you look at art history?
Hmm. So the cross generation uh, connection, sometimes people didn't even know each other's, but they were influenced by the work of artists who came before. So they they looked at the work of the person, and were inspired thanks to that. So let's say Edouard Manet has influenced quite a few artists, or he was influenced by Velázquez, and he had never met him. So, but he went to Spain, he saw the paintings, and that inspired him.
So both the connections and the inspirations, you would
Yeah.
say, are both
Yes.
the connectivity to the cultural like element.
Yes.
And what do you feel like is that success that you talk about, the success as an artist
Hmm.
that you put in there?
That's an interesting question, and I think it depends on each person. I had read something that was saying that there is you can consider success because you are recognized by your peers. Let's say Vincent van Gogh in his time was successful because someone like Claude Monet thought he was among the best. And you have historical recognition, and that comes usually later in time, but someone like David Hockney has it already. And you have commercial recognition, which is okay, you sell your paintings at a very expensive price. But let's say Alfred Stevens was an artist who was famous in his time and who was very successful commercially, but now he's not in really history, or at least he's considered as someone who was not key in the development of art because he did something very classic, portraits that were looking good, and but he was successful in his time, but now it's not maybe the artist that people have in mind. So yeah, it's
Interesting.
different
So it's
criteria.
kind of like that people have in their mind after the fact, and how they do that is through the connections in their time.
Mm. And
Is
then you
that
could add the personal success. Like it was kind of sad to read Marie Cassade's biography. At the end of her life, she was very bitter. She got all the success as an artist, commercial, and recognition, but she had the feeling that she had kind of missed something in her personal life because she put everything into her career, and she didn't marry, she didn't have children. So you see, that's another criteria. It's very personal.
so like personal success versus artistic success?
So that's why there are different definitions. But usually, what we have in mind when we say an artist is successful is probably for art history is the recognition to museums and from the authorities or the establishment.
Interesting. So what would you say influences the establishment? What are these like key aspects that the establishment looks at? Since you've been looking at the establishment a lot, it seems,
Mm.
from your own perspective.
Well, usually before an artist gets into a museum and is recognized as someone who has made something valuable enough to be considered as to be kept for future generation, the decision comes from art curators of that museum, and they usually, from what I understood, look for people who add something new, or if not something new, something very personal, um, and that is uniquely their own voice. So I think that would be my view on that. What do you think?
Oh, I mean, I feel like I need to study more. That's why I'm asking you. I'm I'd love to know. I'm figuring it out one step at a time. So
I
I
mean, same for me. That's very empirical. I don't have any specific sources about that.
yeah, I just think it's interesting since you've been looking at this,
Mm,
like what patterns you've been finding. I think that's,
yeah.
we each kind of start to look at our own and all the people we talk to, and kind of like collate into that or into our own vision. And I find
Yeah.
it interesting what you're seeing, after all of this delving in deeply into each history.
And then
Um,
history is sometimes re-evaluated. Like these days, people are taking into account the fact that minorities have been underrepresented. And so some people in the establishment try to make up for that, and that's a good thing. So
hmm.
we can have a new light on someone like Jacob Lawrence, who is famous, not famous. Like, he's known for by some people, but not necessarily by so many people. So the light on people of color that are underrepresented until now can, make a refocus on his work, for example.
So the light of history becomes redefined,
Yeah, I think
seems.
so. Yeah, I think so.
Hmm. So would you say that that's changing? Like that light is shifting and a move.
I,
It's
I
moving. It seems.
I think there is a better awareness today, about the fact that at least an acknowledgement that, oops, people have been left out for centuries. And so we should pay attention to that. I'm not saying the problem is solved, but the first step is to acknowledge the issue.
Interesting. So, how do you feel like this is going to work as like people are all interconnected into the mix? Because do you think that there's like whole different groups that just weren't interconnected into these other groups? And how do you feel like are they interconnected now? And is that going to play into history? Or is it just like, oh, this part of the interconnections is all that matters now?
Hmm. Um, I'm not sure how to answer that. Uh, what I think is that information is accessible, and there is no more excuses to say, I was not aware of that. And also, in a way, power has is a bit higher for artists who can directly connect with some curators, and some are, I mean, some people are very open to connections. That's one thing I found out by trying to reach out to some people. Most of the people are open. I mean, they won't necessarily all do something for you, but they are usually open to discussion like we are, doing today. So that's how I, I don't know if some groups remain, really separate, probably, but the importance is to build your own community and go from there.
Interesting. So how have you found that? Because you moved from Paris and now like you had your whole community there and your community here. Or is it like all interconnected online? How did that work for you as an
Yeah, it's
international
kind of
artist?
all connected. Like I have people I chat with who are in Australia. I've never met them, but we connect thanks to Instagram, and that's great. Especially since I live in a suburban area, I don't get to meet a lot of, I mean, people every day, and being in your studio is sometimes a bit isolating. So social media has been a great way to connect with many people all over the world, or to stay connected.
That's beautiful. I mean, that's how we're connecting right now. So
Exactly.
with and how we're connecting with all the people out there, like now and
Exactly.
later. It's a
Yes.
very interesting way to talk about time, is where like in the moment and your work is about this like past work in the present, and
Yes.
it's it's very interrelated, interconnected. Let's check out what's going on here.
So Ilma Klimt, a perfect example of how to rewrite history, because her work had not been shown when she was alive, or not a lot. And now it happens that we realize she was probably the first artist to create abstract art, when for decades we wrote in art history book that it was Kandinsky. I mean, it happened that they both created abstract art, but at the same time, they were not connected necessarily with each other, but they shared some common ideas about spirituality in art. And I mean, the story of Hilma af Klint is kind of appealing, because she was doing spiritism. And so the story is that she said that she did some automatic painting, like painting what the spirits were telling her to paint, in very short resume summary.
Interesting. And how do you feel about that? Like you're painting the automatic painting more precisely, or how do you relate to that? Because then you're repainting the autom-
Yeah.
automatic work.
Well, it happens that I do share some views with her for spiritual life. Like I do believe in the life of the soul after or mortal lives. So it kind of appeals to me, even though that's just belief or hopes that there is something behind that explains all of this. So her story was kind of, I could relate to that. Not that I do spiritism at all.
That's very interesting. So you find like each painting you're relating to this person, to their art, or some there's some
Yeah, there
element of
is.
relation.
Yes, there is something, and if you look through my paintings, most of them are quite colorful. It's something that is important for me, and I also, because Instagram is a place where people share usually nice and positive, happy story. I make a focus on that type of events. I mean, sometimes they're not so. Uh, they can be a little bit more sad, but usually they're about a nice moment in the life of the artist
Hmm, that's so interesting.
to reflect on how we use Instagram nowadays.
Wait,
Most
explain that. Explain that one more time. How we use Instagram,
Well,
please.
if you look at the difference between the different social media, let's say Twitter is about sharing articles and stories that happened in the world and that are not always happy stories. Facebook will be mostly now also sharing about articles and some stuff that happens in your life, but and Instagram by the founder saw it as a platform to share beautiful images, and that has influenced the way that Instagram has curated at the start and pushed the how the media was used. I'm not saying that all the images on Instagram are beautiful, certainly not, but at least the that's what wanted the founder of it. And most of what is shared on Instagram is usually about this dreamy life and everything is going well.
Speaking of that, here's you in your dreamy life.
Yes, that's me in the Affordable Art Fair in New York with a beautiful installation by Azar Gallery. And yeah, that was a nice event. So that shows the different artists and different size also that I like to work on.
So you have some that are much bigger, some are much smaller.
Yeah,
Do you do multiples or some prints or what's happening?
I I haven't until now, up to now. Uh, I did a few works on paper very recently. I still haven't put them online or whatever because I've had some requests, but they are original. They're not prints. I still do the painting, so I haven't done really like prints per se.
So are you doing multiples of each one? Because you delve into the story very heavily for each painting.
Hmm.
Are you painting one painting and then that's it for
So
every story?
there are a few that I did several times, but I put a limit at three, like no more than three. And by format, let's say the small ones, it happened that, I had someone say, oh, can I have this Keith Haring? Say, okay, but no more than three. Because also for me, it's not fun, I don't want to just recreate the same thing. So that would be, but the big ones, usually they're unique.
Hmm.
Oh, that's all again.
That's
This,
there.
yes, the diptych. Alma Thomas, who was exhibited. I mean, this painting is at the White House, thanks to the Obamas, and she is very inspiring as a person because she started her career when she retired, at least her professional artist career. She had been a teacher before, and she showed at the Whitney when she was 72. So, it's never too late. I like her story.
What do you like so much about her story?
Well, the fact that, she was passionate about what she was doing and she started her career at 67. I mean, usually people say, now I'm just going to read books and, do my garden and she was like, going into her painting and that's, inspiring to think that, it's never too late.
That's beautiful. You just never know, right?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't happen for everyone, but for her it worked. And to be, as a person who had suffered from segregation and her parents had moved, to give her more opportunity, from the south to Washington, and she had been really a victim of segregation, and then at the end of her life to have a solo exhibition at the Whitney was, I think, quite a beautiful story.
Hmm. Oh, I'm gonna answer Frank here.
Yeah.
I'm I'm considering making this a podcast. I have no idea yet, but this is episode 52, so I'm figuring it out as I go. So just follow me, and I'll have more artists, curators, gallery people, just awesome people in art. That's what I do. This is my fun thing. I don't know. I'm figuring it out as I go. So thank you for asking that, and thank you, Henrietta. Yeah, it's right now. It's here on Instagram. We'll see what happens next. How's that? Yeah. So if anybody has any questions, we have about 12 minutes left. So feel free to ask some questions below as we continue on our journey.
Perfect.
Cool.
Yeah, so that's the photo of the collaboration I did with Art Girl Rising. So you can see the T-shirt with the first names of these ladies, and I did a painting for each of these artists. Yeah, that's the Lee Krasner that is behind me. So you've seen it twice.
Always more times. Why not, right?
I mean, I like the rebirth that is into her painting, even though it's a very joyful painting at a very sad moment of her life, which shows that artists can have very different way of expressing their feelings, and it was probably also mixed feelings for her. Yeah. What a person. She's also quite something. So here I did, so I was a bit, depressed by the whole situation. So I was like, okay, I have to make happy paintings, even more happy than usually. And so I was like, okay, I'll do this series about flowers in art. And I made this one inspired by her sculptures that she created in 2000. And she had a big show in LA. So that's what the story is about.
Henriette asked, what did you learn from copying her painting? Do you call it copying, or you said
I mean, I
appropriating?
say recreating, and in this case it's sculpture, so that was even more fun because I have to try to create a little bit of the depth. Of course, that sculpture doesn't have too much shadows or anything, so but it's always fun. Like, I'm like, oh, and the more challenging it is, it's like, yeah, I'm gonna it's let's do this. And I usually chose, of course, artworks that I like, so it's always a pleasure.
Mixed media mashup asks, have you ever had a solo show?
Yes, I've had the recent one was in New York in 2019 at Michel Mario Gallery, and so we showed my work, and it was a very nice moment for me, a big step for me to have a solo show in New York. I was like, yeah.
I'm sure. How did that come about?
Same thing, I had met Michelle, so the art gallery owner at a fair, and since she's from Canada, she speaks French, so we started to connect like this, and I went to her gallery many times, and then we became acquaintances, and then one day she decided to show my work first in a fair, and then uh, she offered me to have this solo show at her place. So it all happened because people work with people, and we get to know. Sorry, there is a question. Oh, sorry. So, and I still work with her, so it's a pleasure.
Wow, that's beautiful. Yeah, so feel free to continue to ask some questions down there. And yeah, I have more that happen every Tuesday, almost every Tuesday I try, and then Thursdays I go on the Freedom Tapestry project and do another one. So feel free to follow me,
See the
follow
comment of
Laurence.
someone, and the my paintings are still at Michel Mario Gallery,
Oh,
and
really?
she's opened by appointment. So I mean, it's
Wow.
not the solo show anymore, but it's she has paintings of mine.
So yes says you say life is about happy encounters. I'm not sure if you did you
Yes.
say that? I'm not, okay, you said that. Okay. Um do you do work that reflects suffering because out of suffering something wonderful can happen? Can it?
Yeah, I mean, the example of Lee Krasner behind me, I mean, she lost her husband and she had been supporting his career for years. And I mean, Jackson Pollock was made by Lee Krasner and Clement Greenberg in a way, but she was like the coach and the agent of her husband. So she pushed his work, and he didn't really could stand the pressure of being so famous and so on. And so for her it was kind of a suffering to have her marriage go down the drain, or I don't know if it's the right expression, but collapsing and losing her husband even though they were already separated, but then also liberation. So that would be a good example of a painting that was born of suffering, definitely.
Wow. So you talk about this coaching. What have you found in the realm of like coaching? Are there like a lot of how does that work in the art world for that you found?
I don't know because I don't have one, but I certainly have friends who have, given me advice, and I read also a lot of books. I mean, I used to work in a totally different field, and when I decided to really give it a try, I had to learn how to be a professional artist because it's one thing to know how to paint, it's another to make a living out of it. So I had to go out there to connect with people and listen to advice. And there are some people who do a great job at coaching. I think Sergio Gomez, who connected us, is a great person that I've been learning a lot from.
Yeah, Sergi is amazing. He has
Yeah,
so much good, so many good. I suggest everybody go out there and follow Sergio.
yeah.
I did a talk with him a week or two, a couple weeks ago. So
No,
go check
definitely.
that
I mean,
out.
I've learned a lot from, and he's very generous in his advice. So, but some people have also, and he does one-to-one coaching, I think. Um, and some people do that too. So just have to find the right person for you, I guess, because not
Yeah,
everybody does the same thing.
because I'm curious because you talk about Jackson Pollock and
Yes.
wife his wife ex whatever we talk about art history. It's a very strange thing as we talk about time, but um and timelines and relationships to each other. But at some point she was coaching him. How do you find that like the personal relationship of the coach and the people around them coaching each other? Have you found that like in art history
I mean,
much besides that one, or is that the only one that you found?
there are probably other examples of at least people who've helped each other. Let's say Jasper Johns was thrown into the lights thanks to Robert Rauschenberg, who introduced his work. and probably guided his friend because he was a bit older. So it can happen, not necessarily, it can be just mentorship, just a friend helping you out. As for Pollock, he was someone who probably had his own issues, and she tried to help him quit alcohol and to, support his that he could work, focus on his career, and then she promoted his work by just spending time on trying to get shows for him. And so she was like, it was teamwork for them, and she dropped her own work, or at least put it on the side to spend more time for him.
So interesting.
And that happened in other couples.
Interesting. What other couples did you see that with? Had you
Well, Hélène de Kooning and Bill de Kooning, they were also. Elaine also supported her husband before going different ways, but in fact coming back together. And yeah, she's been also promoting her husband's. Edward Hopper, his wife, has been super supportive, and she has decided that his career came first. So yeah, there could be other examples, and that's the one that came up to my mind now.
Excellent. Frank, just follow me and follow my stories. You'll figure it out. No. So back to this. It's very interesting, as we've had we've seen different examples of how this works. We've probably about 3 minutes left. So if you want to just share like what's happening. What do you want us to know more about what's happening in your world? Where can we check your workout?
Yeah, so, well, if you want to know and, follow me, it's easy to do it on Instagram. There are a lot of information on my website too. I'm always happy to also connect with people who have questions. And as for things going on right now, I have an online exhibition with Can Gallery, so everybody can see it from their own personal device. It's, 3D exhibition, so it's kind of cool. I have work in France, in Honfleur. I have works in New York, so they can be seen, of course, easily through my Instagram or website, but they can also be seen in person if people are located in the areas.
That's so cool. So before we close out, I'm going to say thank you so much, Laurence, for being here, for conversing, for talking about this, for making it a thing, for being so open about your work. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for your questions.
Of course.
All right.
And thank you to all of the audience for being here. Everybody asking questions and participating. I love participatory.
Yeah, and I couldn't read the questions, so if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them after the live.
Yeah, so DM, just go follow us right now, and just go there, come back if we're still around, but go there, follow whoever you're not following, or both of us if you're not following either of us. This will be posted later on my IGTV, and yeah, so thank you so much. I can be found at Aaron Jack Line Art. And Laurence, where can you be found? Why don't you spell it out for us?
Laurence de Valmy, LaurенceDeValmy.
Instagram, Facebook.
Yes, same thing.
And website.
Easy.
Go there.
Same thing.
Yes. Do you have some last words of inspiration you could leave us with?
That we are all connected, so let's try to make the most of it. And stay safe.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Till the next time.
Bye-bye. Bye.